Hello, everybody. So I am reshooting the supplementary content video I made the other day for our March and April entertainment review because I realized I had more stuff I wanted to say and I had corrected comments that I wanted to make about Cougar Town. So, in this supplementary content video, we are going to talk about a few different TV shows. Originally, it was just going to be Friends and Cougar Town, but I also wanted to talk about Gilmore Girls too, because I have been watching that show since last year with my friend Kathleen, who is my neighbor in my apartment. So, first of all, I wanted to talk about relatable TV characters in Friends, Cougar Town, and Gilmore Girls. I go into depth in a shorter form video on my YouTube channel about why I relate to certain characters from Friends, but I wanted to talk about some bullet points about specifically why I relate to Monica and Chandler, first of all. So, the top relatable reasons why I relate to Monica Gellar on Friends are as follows. She is a caring and supportive friend. Her fashion sense is just as on point as Rachel's is, and I have quite a few outfits in my closet that are very similar to what she wears. Her father mentions in the episode where they're having dinner together at Monica and Rachel's apartment, and Ross tells them about Carol being a lesbian and being pregnant, that Monica is a reader. Now, this is not mentioned or alluded to again until the one with Ross's sandwich, when Monica is taking the literature class with Phoebe and Rachel at the new school. And I think it would have been interesting if the producers of Friends had done a little flashback scene when Jack Gellar was mentioning that Monica was a reader, and they could have shown a clip of Monica reading a book to give the audience an idea of what her favorite books were. But that was a huge plot hole, and that irritated me a lot, actually. Chandler and Monica are a relatable couple because they are mature and they both have steady jobs. This is where I can kind of compare Grayson and Jules and Monica and Chandler a little bit. Okay, so yes, in Friends, Monica is a chef, and in Cougar Town, Jules is a real estate agent. But for the guys, now Grayson is a bartender and he only works nights, and I think he only works part-time too. But at the beginning of Friends, Chandler is a statistical analysis and data reconfiguration person at this big data analytics company. And another plot hole I found in Friends is that they constantly mention how they don't know what Chandler's job is. So it would have been nice if in the Thanksgiving flashback episodes they could have asked Chandler how his classes were going and how his classes that he was taking at his courses in college would later lead to him choosing a job like that. And that was another missed opportunity for the writers of Friends, I feel, is to go into a little bit more detail about what Chandler studied in college to get his job, and how he got the job in the first place. Because, I mean, that's a pretty big job that he has. He's the head of his department, or like the assistant head of his department, and he has a really big job. And then in later seasons, he quits that job because it doesn't really allow him to spend time with Monica, and he ends up deciding to start fresh all over again and go into the bottom rung as an advertising intern. And then in the lottery episode, he gets promoted to junior copywriter. So I really love the character development that Chandler experiences throughout the whole seasons of Friends, because he starts off as very anxious and not really good in relationships. But I think when he got engaged to Monica, that brought him out of his shell a lot. And Monica was really the person who encouraged him to get a job that he was actually going to enjoy. And that's what encouraged him to get into advertising in the later seasons. And the other way I can relate to Monica is because in the one with the routine, which is the holiday episode where Ross and Monica are gonna go on Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve to do the dance routine, she says a quote about the holidays being more about togetherness and friendship than about material things. And like, when this show was airing, that quote didn't really mean much to me, because when that episode aired, season 6 of Friends, I was like a teenager, 13 or 14. So I didn't really relate much to that quote back then, but now I certainly do, and I really adopt that mindset into my everyday life, that holidays and birthdays should not be focused about material things, but more so spending time with the people that you care about. And another way that I related to Monica when I was younger was the whole relationship anxiety thing. I mean, that's how I related to Chandler too, because with relationship anxiety, I spent my teens and early 20s being really nervous around guys and not knowing how to approach them because of my autism spectrum disorder, and being socially awkward and not knowing how to ask a guy out. And in the Super Bowl episode of Friends, which Julia Roberts guest stars on, Monica is afraid to ask Jean-Claude Van Damme on a date, and she asks Rachel to do it for her, and then Rachel ends up going on a date with him instead. No offense, but I hated that plot line in that episode, and I think they should have just kept it with Julia Roberts. The reason why I feel that way is because while Monica is very relatable in that scene, Jean-Claude Van Damme was just not very interesting to me as a guest star. And I saw an article online, and I didn't read all the way through. I saw this article online a while ago, back right before Matthew Perry passed away. I think it was in like mid-October, late October, right around the time Matthew Perry died, where Jean-Claude Van Damme said that he didn't really like his guest star appearance on Friends, and it was something that he really regrets doing. I really wish I had read that whole article, because I just thought it was really interesting that he said that. So yeah, that was one plot line with Monica they could have done without. As a side note, another plot line with Monica that I didn't really like was the one when Phoebe and her have the romantic relationship with the guy in a coma. I didn't like that episode. And one more side note before I move on to talk about the next relatable character. I keep seeing this post pop up in my Instagram newsfeed that was a quote from Courtney Cox where she said in some kind of an interview that she thought Monica was a really annoying character. And I thought it was really interesting that she would say something like that. And I just wanted to point out that some of Monica's personality traits kind of move over into Jules from Cougar Town, who I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But there are a couple of episodes where I think Monica is really annoying in. And the first one is the one when they have to split the birthday parties up for Rachel because her parents are divorcing. Like, I think Monica is too, like, bossy about how she wants her party to be run. And also, I would not want to be at that party because I thought the game that she was playing was boring, so I don't blame Gunther for wanting to leave. I think he made a good choice by deciding to go to Chandler and Joey's party because that's the party I would want to be at. And I even wrote a fan fiction chapter about that very episode where I tell Chandler that I want to be just that. I want to be with Chandler and Joey instead of at Monica and Rachel's. The other two episodes that stand out to me as Monica being really annoying is the one when they're shopping for wedding dresses, because Monica is, like, really obsessed with getting a certain wedding dress. But I hate that episode because she's, like, a control freak about wanting to get a certain wedding dress. But the wedding dress she ends up being in for the wedding episode is, like, totally fine. I love that dress. I thought Courtney Cox looked very, very pretty in it. And the third episode that stands out to me as Monica being really annoying is Phoebe's wedding. And I think even there's a scene in that episode where Phoebe yells at Monica for being too controlling. And I don't really blame Phoebe for being angry because she's absolutely friggin' right. So, the next TV character that I can relate to, of course, is Chandler from Friends. And the top two highlights I wanted to mention about Chandler, and I mentioned a few other relatable ways I connect to Chandler's character in my other video that I made a couple of months ago. Or actually, it wasn't really a couple months ago. I think it was last summer. Because I go into more detail in that video about how I connect to all of the characters from Friends. But in today's video, I'm just going to talk about Monica and Chandler. And the top two reasons why I connect to Chandler is because of his sense of humor. And in season 4, episode 9, where he's talking with Joey and Ross in the coffee house about how their plans with their college friend to go out and party didn't work out because they were supposed to have some friend of theirs come to visit, but then he cancels. And his quote is, "I'm 29 years old, damn it, and if I want to stay at home in my easy chair and watch TV, I should be able to do that." And I couldn't, or like something along those lines. I don't have the exact quote written down, but in the slideshows that I have on Instagram, I'm pretty sure there is a clip of that scene in the slideshow. So if that clip hasn't gotten copyright struck yet, just go look for it and watch it. So I needed to make one more comment before I move on and talk about the next relatable character. Something I have been noticing recently is that I have been getting inboxes on my Instagram in my notifications for the video clips that I have been sharing about friends that have been in my slideshows I put together. And I guess the people who are originally posting these kinds of clips are starting to get notifications from the TV company that it's illegal to post the video clips of friends on Instagram, because I have been getting notifications that the videos that I have been resharing have been getting copyright stricken. So I'm glad I'm not really making those slideshows anymore, because I think now that I know that there are copyright infringements entailed by those video clips, I'm glad I'm not watching a lot of those videos anymore, because I have a feeling a lot of those original people who were posting that content are probably getting sued by Warner Brothers by sharing those clips of friends illegally. So I have a feeling that eventually all of my slideshows are going to be missing video clips because of that reason. So the next show that I wanted to talk about that I have been watching lately is Cougar Town, and the character, again, that I relate to the most in this show is played by Courtney Cox, who played Monica. So she plays Jules Cobb, who is the lead female character in Friends, and once again, like Monica, I can relate to her because she's a good friend, she cares about all her friends, and in an episode we recently watched, what I noticed about Jules is that she's not afraid to stand up to her friends and let her know that they're overstepping her boundaries. It's in the episode we watched last week where, like, Lori spends the weekend at Jules's house because she's, like, jealous of Jules spending all of her time with Grayson. So, like, she's up in her face all the time and stuff. And, Jules basically has to say to her that she's overstepping a lot of boundaries and invading her privacy in certain ways. And, like, I have this same issue with my friends, and I know I have similar issues sometimes with respecting other people's boundaries, but I have learned from my past mistakes, and I am working through trying to improve that. So be patient with me, please, if I start to repeat old habits, because I don't intend to. So my friend, as I was saying before, my friend Kathleen and I have been watching Gilmore Girls, and two characters I relate to the most on Gilmore Girls are Rory Gilmore, the lead female protagonist, who is played by Alexis Bledel from Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants and Tuck Everlasting. And I relate to her because she loves to read, and she's a journalist. Now, I went to school in college to study communications. I've always been a writer my whole entire life. Like, I mostly do a lot of creative writing, like poetry and short stories and fan fiction. But throughout high school and college, I was also part of the school paper. And in the episode of Gilmore Girls that I just watched today, Rory joins the school paper at Chilton, and then once she goes to college, she goes to Yale to study journalism. So that's how I relate to her. And then I also relate to Rory's best friend, Lane Kim, who is played by Kiko Agana, and I relate to her because she's a musician. Lane is a drummer in a rock band which goes against her parents' way of how she should be viewed. Like, her parents are really strict, and they feel she should like follow certain rules of her culture, and being in a rock band doesn't really follow the norms of her culture, and her mother does not really like the fact that she's into rock and roll music and is in a band. And another thing I can connect to Lane on is that she likes music from different decades. Like, if you have known me for a while, you know that I like Broadway show tunes, but in addition to Broadway show tunes, I also like disco music, I also like classic rock, I also like music from my era, which was the 1990s and early 2000s, like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Justin Timberlake, Miley Cyrus before she went crazy, the Jonas Brothers to some extent, Demi Lovato, songs from Disney movies, etc., etc. And in the episode that we watched today, Rory was getting ready to go back to school for sophomore year at Chilton, and before she leaves for school, Lane meets her at Luke's Diner to ask her to go to the music store in Hartford near her school to pick up certain CDs by certain 1960s music groups like the Beatles and stuff. So now it's time for some character comparisons. So for Friends and Gilmore Girls, I wanted to talk to you guys about the parental figures in these characters' lives. Judy Gellar, who is Monica and Ross's mom, played by Christina Pickles, and Kelly Bishop, who plays Emily Gilmore, who is actually coming out with a memoir in September, which I can't wait to get at the bookstore. So, one thing that Kathleen and I talk about very often when we get together to watch Gilmore Girls is the comparisons and contrasts we see between Judy Gellar and Emily Gilmore. So Emily and Judy are both very strict parents, because Lorelai, who is Rory's mom, had Rory when she was 16, and she basically got kicked out of her house because she had a baby when she was a teenager. And Monica is always in competition with Ross because Ross was a medical marvel, and she's always made to feel lesser than. And so when I asked Kathleen which mother is worse, Judy or Emily, she agrees with me that Judy is the worst mom because of how cruel she is to Monica throughout the whole 10-season run of Friends. There is one episode where she does redeem herself and admit to the fact that she is indeed a bitch. And this is the episode where Monica is asked to cater a luncheon for her friends, and she actually gives Monica a compliment about how good her cooking is and how good she did with the catering. And this is the only time that Judy Gellar redeems herself throughout the whole entire series. I think that episode is the one with the dozen lasagnas, if I'm correct. And other than that, she's just so mean to Monica, and I can't stand her. Now, Emily definitely has some moments where she's really mean to Lorelai, but I think that's just because of all the past difficulties that she had with them, with Lorelai as a teenager, and the fact that she had Rory at a young age. So, the other character comparison I wanted to talk about is Friends and Cougar Town. We just watched the Valentine's Day episode of Cougar Town tonight, where Grayson is having trouble, like, opening up to Jules about, like, his past and stuff, and showing his emotions. And this is one way that Grayson is similar to Chandler, because in season 6, episode 14 of Friends, the one where Chandler can't cry, they're all watching Bambi in Monica and Rachel's apartment, and Monica makes a big deal out of trying to get Chandler to cry or, like, show his emotions. So she goes through all of these different scenarios. Will you cry when we get married? Will we cry when you first have a baby? Will you cry when I die? And Chandler just sits there stoically, doesn't say anything. And Monica comes on kind of aggressively to Chandler in that scene, I have to say, especially at the end, when she's like, so you're not gonna cry when I die? Like, she almost gets angry at him about it. In Cougar Town, in the episode that we just watched today, I think maybe, my guess is that when they were making this episode of Cougar Town, Courtney Cox, who is one of the directors and writers for the show, probably sat down in a writer's room and thought about how Monica handled the situation with Chandler during Friends, and she probably worked that situation into writing her scenes with Grayson, and I noticed a big difference in the character, and, like, she seemed to be really toned down and not as aggressive as Monica came across in the one where Chandler can't cry. So I actually thought that was sort of an improvement over Monica. So, first impressions of Gilmore Girls. Kathleen and I are very early on into season 2 right now. So today we just watched episode 6 of season 2. And we are really enjoying Gilmore Girls up to the point in the series that we are at right now. Our favorite characters are Rory, Lane, Suki, Luke, Richard Gilmore, and Max Medina. Richard is Rory's grandfather, and I gotta say, in the grandparent pairings in Friends and Gilmore Girls, I love the grandfather characters. I think that I can't remember the actor's name who plays the grandfather in Gilmore Girls. His first name is Edward, but I can't remember his last name. But he's fantastic, and I love the way he has such a good bond with Rory. I think the reason why that is because he didn't really have a good bond with Lorelai when she was growing up, so he feels he has a lot of ground to cover up with trying to have a better relationship with his granddaughter, which makes sense. And, like, there was an episode in season 1 where they spend a whole day together at the country club, and I thought that was sweet. And Jack Gellar, who was played by Elliot Gould, Monica and Ross's father, I prefer him much better to Judy. I mean, so sure, Monica's parents may not be the nicest to her, but there are 2 scenes in 2 episodes between Jack and Monica that really stood out to me that proved to him that he was like a much better parent than Judy. The first one was in the episode where the grandmother passes away, the one where Nana dies twice, and he's having a conversation with Monica after the funeral about how he wants to die and how he wants to be buried at sea, and I just like how they're bonding in that episode. And then in season 3, episode 1, at the very end of the episode, he comes to Monica and Rachel's apartment to check on Monica after she breaks up with Richard to make sure that she's okay. And it's really sweet because Monica actually ends up falling asleep on the couch and he just hugs her and gives her a kiss. It's very sweet. So as far as reading is concerned, I am doing a series. I have been doing a series since the end of January, beginning of February, where I am reading books that are seen on Gilmore Girls and Friends. I was inspired to do this series after I watched Haley Pham's video, Reading Like Rory Gilmore, for a week. And I have read, And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which was fantastic. Matt and I saw the play of the Amato Center of that back in 2011, and when I was reading the book, I couldn't help but think back to the performance of the play that I saw several years ago and thought how spot on the casting was for each of the characters, and my favorite characters are Vera Claythorne and Lieutenant Lombard, who were played by my friends Sophie and Kevin Linkram, if I'm not mistaken. So I gave And Then There Were None an A-. The other book that I read, the other book that we are reading from, Kathleen and I just started listening to the audiobook from The Picture of Dorian Gray today. The Picture of Dorian Gray is by Oscar Wilde. And our first impressions of that are, we do not like the main character Dorian Gray, because he seems to be a narcissist and very full of himself. And we don't really care much for the narrator of the book either, because he comes across as really obsessive with Dorian Gray and wanting to have a relationship with him, kind of like Ross and Friends, and how he's obsessed with Rachel throughout the whole entire series, or not so much wanting to be with Rachel, but the idea of Rachel and the idea of being in a relationship with her and having a picture-perfect family life. And another book I just started reading is from season 3, episode 13 of Friends, the one where Monica and Richard are just friends. So I have just started reading The Shining by Stephen King. I am about 152 pages in. I'm really liking it. I love the world building of the Overlook Hotel. I love the family dynamics so far between Jack Torrance, his wife, and his son Danny, who I think is like 7 or 8, and he is a gem of a child character who should be protected at all costs. I think he's just really, really sweet. Danny Torrance from The Shining by Stephen King is one of my favorite child characters from a book. My other 2 favorite child characters are Ruby from the Bright Falls series by Ashley Herring Blake and Waylay from Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. these writers write children beautifully in their books. And as far as The Shining, I can't really give it a rating yet, but I have been working my way up to reading this book because I know it's really scary. I have a feeling that eventually I may DNF it when it gets to the scary part, but I don't know how things are going to go. So far, it's pretty good. I would probably give it a B+. And then as far as the other books that were in Friends episodes that I've read, I read Little Women last month, and I loved it. It was my third time reading it. I go into more details about my history of reading Little Women in my TBR video for March, where I review it, but just to give you a bullet point review, my favorite character is Jo. I hate the love triangle between Jo, Laurie, and Amy. It really annoys me. My favorite character is Beth, and I cry every time where I get to the part where she dies. Sorry for the spoiler. The reason why I like Jo's character is because she's a writer, and she writes plays for her sisters to act in. And I read somewhere that Jo is actually supposed to be a self-insert character for Louisa May Alcott, which makes sense. So I gave Little Women a B+ and 3.75 stars on Goodreads, which is pretty close to 4 stars. And then for the 2 books that Phoebe and Rachel read in The One with Ross's Sandwich in the literature class at the new school, I DNF'd those because in Jane Eyre, I loved the character of Jane, but I just thought the relationship plot line was way too slow to develop. Also, I thought the book was a little bit too long. And for Wuthering Heights, I just couldn't stand either of the romantic leads, Catherine and Heathcliff. And to be honest, the toxicity of their relationship reminded me too much of Ross and Rachel on Friends, which is ironic because this episode is mentioned in an episode of this book is mentioned in an episode of Friends, and I don't know if the writers of the show read this book and had the same thought, which is why they had Rachel and Phoebe read the book. That was the connection I made. I don't know. Anyway, so that is today's video. For the rest of our March and April commentary, please watch the video that is on Matt's channel. The link will be in the description. And this video is being pre-recorded on March 30th to be posted on April 7th at about 4:00 p.m. Thank you.